On today's episode of Mountain Vibes, I'm going to be going over what makes your goggles cheap versus expensive. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Mountain Vibes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So, as mentioned, in today's episode, I'm going to be going over what makes one goggle less expensive or more expensive. And so, there's quite a bit to cover in today's episode. So, without further ado, let's dive into it, shall we? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go over is something that is overlooked as far as I'm concerned, and that is the actual foam on the lens itself. So, you're going to come across three different types. You're going to come across single density, dual density, and triple density foams. The single density foam is, you don't really see it too much anymore. You'll most likely find it on very, very low end goggles. And it's essentially exactly what it is. It's just one type of foam that's kind of put on the goggles. These are generally used to kind of reduce cost, just a quick little cutout, slap it on. They're not the most comfortable because there's no wicking material on the goggles. So if you sweat, you're just going to kind of get this really sort of clammy feeling with it. And as well, they're not just going to be, they're not going to conform to your face very well. And depending on the brand or depending on the price point of the goggle itself, it's just going to be you're really going to feel the frame as well pushing against your forehead or all over your face. So usually if you wear your goggles a little tight, you'll probably end up with a very heavy or very noticeable goggle mark from wearing it. So just keep that in mind. If you kind of find your goggles a little uncomfortable, just kind of check it out, and most likely it will be a single density foam. Now, moving on to the dual density foams, it's pretty much very similar to a single density, but what they do is, if you can kind of take a look here, there's this extra little bit that kind of goes on the side, and now that is a material that makes it a lot more comfortable to sit up against your face. It also wicks the moisture or the sweat away from your skin. Just makes the wearing experience a lot more comfortable, but at the same time, with you kind of having just more of a relatively single density foam in behind that, it's still going to compress a lot. You're still probably going to feel the frame a lot on your face. But, as far as skin irritation or the way that it's actually going to feel, so to speak, against your skin, it's going to feel a lot better. All right, now moving on to the last one, which is the triple density foam. And you can kind of really see it here on this particular goggle. You have your wicking material, you have your lower density, and then your thicker density foam. So obviously the wicking material kind of helps move the moisture away from your face. The middle layer is essentially more to give you a little bit of extra comfort, and that lighter layer, the more dense layer, kind of allows it to kind of more contour to the goggle and allow it to kind of contour to your face a little bit more. So when you're kind of shopping around, generally the triple density foam will be a lot more comfortable. It's going to help, it's not going to irritate your skin as much. You're going to be able to wear it a lot longer. And even as well, the goggle itself will have a much longer life because the foam isn't going to compress as much, and it's just going to, maintain its shape a lot longer. Therefore, you're going to have the goggle for a much longer time. All right, so the next bit we're going to go over is the actual frames themselves. So generally, goggles are going to be made of some form of polyurethane or plastic. This allows it to be a lot more malleable, kind of contour to the shape of your face, kind of maybe squish under a helmet a little bit more. Just provides you with a little bit more comfort. Instead of it being this one really big, solid, rigid piece of plastic, they tend to be a little bit softer. And then traditionally, what you would have to do is you would have to peel the frame back from the lens, pulling away each single tab that is around the entire frame. This is going to be the most tedious or the longest way to change out a lens, because what you have to do is when you put it back, you have to make sure that the tabs are very tight, and then you have to seal it completely around the actual lens to make sure that no air actually comes in. So usually I would recommend doing something like this, either, if you go back to your car, if you actually have to go back into the lodge to do it, just because, especially if it's a really cold day, it may be a little bit harder on your fingers to actually snap it back into place. Nowadays, companies are using many other different methods to kind of change it out. Now, keep in mind, these will also up the price. So one way the companies are doing it now, they're adding magnets to the actual lens and to the actual frame. This makes it a very quick way to snap it in, snap it out. Now, when this first came out, it was just strictly all magnets. So the downside to that is if you fall hard enough, they'll the lens could potentially come away from the frame. And if obviously if you're very unfortunate, you can get buried in some snow. You may have to try and dig it out, or you could even potentially just lose the lens entirely. Nowadays, companies are using magnets to just kind of like hold it in place, and then you still have like a few tabs that you would actually push down on the frame just to kind of like help it like lock it in place, giving you that extra sense of security. Other companies, what they're going to do is their primary way of switching out the lens is some form of a locking mechanism. Some companies will actually do it with like a little trigger button that releases the lens and pops it away from the frame itself. Makes it very quick, kind of pops out from one side and kind of hooks onto the other, and then you just do the opposite to put it back in. Another frame that I've seen and another frame that I've owned in the past is a physical switch that actually, it's the same idea. It unlocks the lens from one end, and then you just kind of have to unhook it from the opposite side. Back on, you hook it, you push it down, and then you lock the lens in place. Now, there are other ways in which some other companies are doing it now, where it's the primary way of switching the lens out is actually on a rail system. So what this is that you actually have like a slit built into the frame itself, and then you have like a little bit of a tongue or kind of like a little slit on the lens. You line it up, you slide it in, and then they're using magnets to help hold the lens properly in place. Kind of gives you, that really nice sort of like quick, easy way to do it, but also a very secure way of keeping the lens on. And then the last way is which the tabs are actually built into the lens itself, and it kind of gives you like little tiny holes or little like notches that you push the frame that you push the lens into. Makes it the same thing, very simple, very quick and easy to do. You can do it with gloves on, but as you start kind of stepping away from that traditional peel back way from a frame, you are going to be spending more money. So when it comes to the frames, it really all depends on what your needs are. If you really want like that quick, easy switch in, switch out type of lens, you could spend a little bit more money. You can go for like the either a magnet system, you can go for a physical locking system, you can go for a rail system. But then again, if you just kind of want to go up with one pair, or if you go up and the conditions aren't going to change, you can just kind of stick with the more traditional type of frame. All right, so moving on to the last bit, and in my opinion, this is actually what dictates the price of a goggle, and that's going to be the lens themselves. So now lenses have two main shapes. You're going to have your cylindrical and your toric. So a cylindrical lens is pretty much a flat sheet of polycarbonate, and then the shape of the lens is then stamped out of that one particular sheet. Then after that's stamped out, the material is then bent into shape and then put into the lens. The problem is when you actually bend the plastic like this, you do create a lot of distortion. Reason for that is when you're actually doing this, you're bending the way that the light is actually coming through to your eye. And also as well, you may even notice like a little bit of like out of focus elements, or you may even notice like almost like the bends in the actual lens itself. Now the plus side to this, it is a very inexpensive way of manufacturing the lenses, so therefore you'll find it more on your price point type of goggles. Now your toric lenses are actually designed to mimic the shape of your eye. They are created in a mold perfectly, both horizontally and vertically. This creates the best optical clarity that you'd be able to get. Also, as well, some companies will actually go as far as tapering the outside of the lens and having it slightly get thicker towards the middle. The reason for this is it allows the light to enter the lens equally, at no matter what angle the light is actually coming from, and at the same time, it allows the very little or to no distortion within the lens. And also within this manufacturing way, you're able to get a lot more larger field of view because the lens is able to be bent all the way around, and at the same time providing you better optical clarity. And now within those two shapes, you will come across a single layer and a 2-layer lens. You don't really see the single layer lens too much anymore. The reason for that is they do fog up a lot because they do not regulate the temperature from your body heat and the outside. Whereas a 2-layer lens, because there's a little bit of a gap in between the inside and the outside, the temperature is allowed to regulate a lot better, and therefore not creating the condensation, which then also turns fog. And then after that, there are many different ways in which lenses are treated. You're going to have different finishes. You can come across lenses that are polarized. You're going to come across lenses that are transition or automatic, but I'm going to save those few topics for another video just because they tend to be a little bit more scientific, and I just wanted to try and keep this video as simple as possible. So having said that, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like button down below. I greatly appreciate it. Subscribe if you are not already. Please stay safe out there. Support your local ski and snowboard shop. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.